Good morning to you. It's the 1st of May, and we have just passed payday. So I trust that this is a good morning for you on this Thursday morning as we continue to walk through the storyline of what it looks like to stick with Jesus, to maintain our faith in Christ, to believe in Him, and not to capitulate, not to give up, not to make shipwreck of our lives, not to run aground, but to keep moving on. Never give up. Just keep moving on. It's too late to quit. For those of us who are further down the road, and for those who just started, it's too early to quit. So let's look at this paragraph in the story going from verse 10 to verse 16 of chapter 13, where the writer has spent line upon line talking through the importance of Jesus as the superordinate one in the first 4 verses of chapter 1, and then from verse 5 to 10:18 is the superordinate walk, and then in 10:19 to chapter 13 is the superordinate way. And so in these few verses, he's going to encourage the Christian Hebrews. He's going to encourage them to go outside the camp. And so I've entitled this block, I thought about Outdoor Warehouse. That may be a good name. Outdoor Warehouse is a chain store in this country and across our cities that read people out who love outdoor life, who love to be out in the open on the countryside. Outdoor Warehouse. So what does God's outdoor warehouse look like, and why is there this exhortation to opt for the outdoor warehouse? Well, let's read verse 10 to verse 16. It says, we, Christian Hebrews, we have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. This is the new altar now, in the new covenant under Christ. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy places by the high priest as a sacrifice for sin are burned, watch this, outdoor warehouse, outside the camp. So Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify people through his own blood. Verse 13, therefore let us go to him outside the camp. Why is it so important to keep this in mind? You need to understand that they are Christian Hebrews. They come out of Judaism. And now Judaism has become obsolete and old and cannot fulfill the requirements of the new. But it was the basis out of which grew this new covenant. And so the First Testament, which is what we call the Old Testament, I call it the First Testament. In a sense, it's part one of the unfolding story in the New Testament. After Christ dies on the cross, that's when the New Testament is instituted, because a will is only effectual or comes into effect once the testator has died. Jesus died and he inaugurates a new and a better way, a freshly slaughtered way, as Hebrews describes it. And so in verse 10 to verse 12, believers are exhorted. They cannot worship at the old, and those who worship at the old have no part in the new. Right? It says, the high priest brought into the holy places sacrifices for sin that are burned outside the camp, because outside of the camp was where all of this took place. Outside the city, So Jesus also suffered where? Outside the gate. And so where do we need to serve him from? Verse 13. Outside the camp. 3 times in this part of the story is a reference to outside the camp and outside the gate. Twice outside the camp, once outside the gate. Because you see, we are not tied to a building. We're not tied to a localized, geolocated city. 4 walls where we meet, where we serve, where we live. We serve in the commons. The commons is where? Outside the gate. In Cape Town, we have a place called the Rondebosch Commons. It's a place where the community can get together, do all kinds of stuff, fly their kites, jog, picnic, tan in the sun, all kinds of things. It's the common space. There's even a believing community that meets there called uh, uh, the common point, right? The common space, the common place. And so Jesus suffers outside of the camp. And that has great significance for Christians. Christians cannot be tied to ideology because ideology is what trapped them inside the camp. Judaism is about being inside the camp. But being a follower of the way has to do with going outside the camp. Watch the image. Outdoor warehouses where we conduct our lives. It's the commons. Any ism will trap you mentally. It will camp you in your thinking. And that's why we are not called to follow an ism. I don't care what ism it is, whether it's inside the church or outside. We are to be caught up with Christ. We are to be enamored with him and build our lives around him and follow him. He is the true and living way. Verse 13, therefore let us go to him, to who? To Christ, outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. Yes, when you think outside the box, when you conduct your life in the space called the commons, you will be free to move and think and speak with great freedom, but it comes at a price. Because outside the camp, we bear the reproach that Christ endured. Remember that hymn? There's a green hill far away without a city wall, where the dear Lord was crucified, who died to save us all. Outside the camp. For here we have no lasting city. That is outside the camp. But we seek the city that is to come. So while we are living outside the camp, we aren't trapped by what people inside the camp are trapped by. Orders of service, places of worship, 4 walls, statements of faith, creedal and confessional statements. But rather we are given to a religio, a game B kind of living that follows the way which is Christ. It's not 10 rules or 4 techniques or 5 commands. It's a way of living. But it's not tied to a city. It's tied to a city that is future. It's yet to come. Verse 15, through him let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God. That is the spirit or the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. We have freedom to speak. The fruit of our lips acknowledge his name. Boy, that's a freedom. I can think freely. I can speak freely because the commons allows me to do that. The commons is what functions outside the camp, outside the strictures and the parameters of law living, outside of an ism or any ism. We need to develop meta-systemic thinking. And oh, that's a great challenge. Because if you're not communist, then you're a capitalist. If you're not a capitalist, then you're a socialist. If you're not a socialist, then you're a Marxist. If you're not an Arminianist, then you're a Calvinist. Some even call themselves Carminian. They marry Calvinism and Arminianism, and they call themselves Carminianism or Carminians. Well, I don't want a label on my forehead, sorry. No target on my back. The only target that I want to shoot for and follow is the way which is Christ. The fruit of our lips acknowledge his name. And now verse 16, do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God, because they function in the sphere of the commons. What I say and what I do, the good that I do, the sharing that I engage in, the sacrifices I make are not fulfilling rules and regulations, but is going with the flow of reality, moving with what life throws. And oh, can life throw us stuff? And somehow it always seems to be throwing us what we're not ready for. Well, if you live inside of the flow of reality, you would have three things that are constantly on your horizon. You have a focus, you have a fire, and you have fun. That's what flow is all about. Focus, fire, and fun. When last have you got fired up about the right thing? Not fired up because you were raging at a raging fury about all the stuff that irritates us, but rather fun at what life is throwing and a fire for living and a focus for life. That is what it means to live inside of a flow state. The fruit of our lips, the good that we do, and what we share with others are sacrifices that are pleasing to God. They are not tied to a geolocation. I can't give you a pin for where you need to rock up in order to do this and such. You do it right where you are, in the space that I now love calling the commons. Because you see, I'm a commoner. I don't have royalty flowing through my blood. My wife claims royalty, the Finn tribe. Very interesting. I have no claim to that. I'm just one who's living his life in the commons, outside the camp, outside the city gate, where there will be a price to pay, because people will marvel at the freedom you have with which you move through life. Jy's nie gegee nie, né? That's the Afrikaans word. You aren't tied by life and living. You are free to be what he has called you to be. You are born crucified, so you can live the crucified life outside the camp. What ism is cramping your style this morning? Racism, Calvinism, Arminianism. There's so many isms. While we are to love the East, IST, we are to hate the ISM, the ism, because isms captivate and trap and stunt and prevent you from living with novelty and newness. Slaps a three-piece suit on you, a collar and a tie, and you look very pious. But no elasticity, no anti-fragility, no freedom to move where the Spirit flows. What's your life like this morning? Are you getting up with a groan and a moan and a grunt? Or are you jumping out of that bed, if you could ever jump anymore, and taking life by the throat and living it to the full? Just that you will enjoy your day as you go with God. Goodbye for now.